And that just takes a moment. This panel discussion today is using Zoom's webinar format. Feel free to enter questions for our presenters into the Q&A box, and the panel facilitators will direct your questions to the panel during the Q&A portion of today's event. I want to welcome you to today's live panel discussion moving forward this fall. This program is hosted by the Online Learning Toolkit. The Online Learning Toolkit is a community of practice for higher education faculty, librarians, and instructional designers. Our aim is to facilitate joyful faculty development communities, webinars, courses, and programs. More information about OLT can be found on our website, onlinelearningtoolkit.com. My name is Judith Dutil. I'm one of your panel facilitators. I'm joined today by my teammate, Melissa Whaler, who will give a wave there in her box. We would like to thank our panelists for generously sharing their time and expertise with us today. Each panelist was asked to prepare a 5-minute presentation responding to the question, what pandemic teaching strategy, lesson, technique, or idea do you plan on carrying with you into your future classrooms? First up today, we'll be hearing from Dr. Brianna Beaupre. Brianna is an assistant professor in the Department of Victim Studies at Sam Houston State University. She teaches and researches about gender victimization and the carceral system. Thank you so much for being with us today, Brianna. I'm going to hand things over to you.
All right, thank you, Judith and Melissa. Can you hear me okay? Yay, good. That's like the first struggle, the first hurdle. So I have learned so much during the pandemic. I never taught an online class really prior to spring 2020. So I came into this very scared, very apprehensive, and I went to Twitter for help. So academic Twitter. And that is where I fortunately found the Online Learning Toolkit. And I also found, great educators from across the world, really, and across different disciplines, very different from my own discipline, which was nice. So I had a lot of resources to kind of go through and kind of figure out what I wanted to do moving forward. And so the one thing, narrowing it down to one thing was tough, but one thing I wanted to talk about that I will be taking with me from here on out is the importance of humanization. And so I learned really about the importance of humanization as a participant in the Online Learning Toolkit communities. I did COOL, which is Camp Operation Online Learning, in the summer of 2020, which helped us design a course for online. And something that really stood out to me through that experience was how humanization was modeled from the facilitators like Judith, Melissa, and Clea. They did a lot to help us understand, the science behind what they were doing, but also just them as humans, their backgrounds and who they are and how that shaped their teaching. And so that's something that I have really embraced and taken with me since. I think before the pandemic, I did kind of hide who I truly was. I have tattoos. I'm relatively young in my field, and I would, I wear suits and try to be more formal than I was. And as the semester would go, I would loosen up. Now I'm just this is who I am. I am a human being. You are human beings too. Let's just get to know each other for who we are. And I found that has been really amazing for connecting with my students as well as my colleagues. But my students, I've employed all different kinds of methods to humanize the class content and also humanize what they submit to me. And so for me, that started a lot with the liquid syllabus, which is something that Michelle Pacansky-Brock and Fabiola Torres shared on Twitter. And so we also learned about it in OLT. And a liquid syllabus is really a more interactive like website or an introduction to the class that students can interact with in a way that is much different than a static PDF document. And I can share an example of mine. I know Clea has done course sites too, which was awesome to also have a model of that. And so like just having that platform to humanize who we are, to have videos talking about who we are, sharing my pets and things like that. Like students have told me it really helped them to get to know me better, and it helped them to see how passionate I am about the subject. So already I have more buy-in because I set up this welcoming framework. And then beyond that, I have students create their own blogs or their own e-portfolios now. I'm just trying this fall, where they're doing the same thing. They're making a site about themselves and about their experience in the class, where they reflect on the content each week. And so I'm really getting to know them in a way that I don't think I even could have done in-person teaching, because a lot of students, especially from underrepresented backgrounds, can be shy in those situations. And so I found that just humanizing has made it more inclusive for students who may be first generation, who their English may not be their first language. And so I've just found so many benefits that I never would have imagined. And I feel so much closer to my students because of it. And so that's really what has shaped my foundations. It's also helped me to be more compassionate and empathetic about deadlines, I don't even call them deadlines now. I call them Best Buy dates. I don't have any late work penalties, which students are kind of like, what? Like they're still not used to it. They still like email me and they're like, oh, I'm so sorry, I can't submit this in time. I'm like, don't worry about it. You submit it when you can. This is a self-paced course. And I found that has also really helped my dynamics with students. So I'm not an authoritarian. I'm more like a coach. I'm more like, someone who's cheering them on rather than someone who's enforcing rules, which I am not very good at anyway. So it fits my style more as well. And so that is really what I've taken. I'm not sure how much more time I have left. Do I have like a minute? Okay. So one other thing that I've incorporated is Discord, which is a chat app. And so that is something beyond the LMS platform where we can chat and talk to each other, more informally. And I wanted to do something like that because I felt like I would connect with students when they would come into class, like the beginning of class, I would talk to them informally. And so Discord has really helped me do that, like facilitate that in an online space. And I'm happy to talk more about, how I use Discord as well. And that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing those ideas. We did get a question in the Q&A box about how we are handling sharing resources. So I did want to take a moment just to mention that we are going to share resources in an email follow-up that also includes a link to the recording for the session. And then on YouTube, any mentioned resources will be put into the description for the session. Our next speaker is Dr. Michelle Kalka. Michelle is an associate professor and chair of communication studies at Manchester University, a small private university in Indiana. After teaching online for a full academic year, Michelle is returning to the physical classroom with new ways of engaging students online and in person. So with that, I will hand things over to Michelle. Thank you.
Thanks, Judith. So last year, I was entirely remote. And to give you some context here, most of my students were first years taking my class as part of general education requirements. And most all of them were on campus and taking most of their classes face-to-face. So my class was an anomaly that they did not choose. And that created some kind of interesting challenges. But I'm going back into the classroom this fall, masked up. And one thing that I wanted to share that I'm carrying forward is online student office hours. And I'm going to run these alongside in-person office hours, giving students the option of how they want to meet with me. And I prefer calling them student hours to office hours because it helps kind of reframe and contextualize what they are, but also because it doesn't have to be in my office, right? And I wanted to share a few things about why Zoom office hours were so effective for me. I got way more participation in my office hours online than I ever did them actually coming to my office. And I think that a big reason for that is that connecting via Zoom is much less intimidating for students, particularly first years, who are still figuring out their way around. They have to find my office, they have to be in my space. And there's obviously a power differential between professor and student in communication, and space can certainly amplify that difference. So Zoom in a lot of ways has an equalizing aspect to it. Like, we are each in our own space. We are in our own kind of comfort zone. The student does not have to kind of come out of their comfort zone to meet me. And the other real advantage to this is that they can access me from wherever they are during my scheduled office hours. Sometimes that might be on a break from their job. Sometimes that might be while they are taking care of their children, or they are taking care of siblings, or they might be in their dorm room. But wherever they were, I could meet them where they were. And I also, in that process, got to know a lot more about them as people. So if they're talking to me on a break from their job, then I get to kind of chat with them a little bit too about what their job is and how long they've worked there, and kind of make those kinds of connections that I might not otherwise get to do. And I also found that I had better and longer conversations over Zoom with students. So part of the process at my university for students that are on academic probation is that we have to meet with each of them twice a month. And so I might have 15 to 20 students on academic probation in a given semester that I have to meet with twice a month. And in the past, students have often, that are on academic probation, are often have kind of a lot of fear barriers as well about interacting with faculty. And a lot of times that process was very quick. Can you sign my form about how I'm doing? Like at the end of class, like on their way out the door in the rush of moving between classes. And we didn't have space to really talk, and they wouldn't really be willing to come to my office hours and talk privately. And if they did, there was often a concern somebody else is going to overhear what we're talking about. But over Zoom, I actually got the chance to talk to them one-on-one. And so I learned more about their circumstances in those meetings. I learned more about who they were as students. Sometimes they were just more kind of open with me about what's going on when they were in kind of their own comfortable environment, and being able to talk about that. The other advantage with Zoom, I think, is that I think that students understood the purpose of student office hours better. So there's often this misconception, especially for first generation students, about what office hours are. And they think it's this time when the professor is in their office working and they are not to be disturbed, right? And on Zoom, it kind of seemed easier to grasp that this was time literally to connect with me. Like, I was there, I was waiting, I was connected, and I wasn't just like working on something else. And so it was really a kind of a nice opportunity for students to be able to pop in to Zoom office hours from wherever they were, and even just ask a question and make a quick question and then leave, and they don't feel like, you know, it's a lot kind of out of their time to do that. But I think they understood better, like that is connection time with me. And so that was a kind of big advantage of that. So even though I'm going back into the classroom and face-to-face classes, one thing that I'm definitely carrying with me, and no matter what format we're in, is those Zoom office hours. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your tip about having student hours online. That's another incredible humanizing strategy. We are going to move now to the next presentation. And our next speaker is John Lemaster. John is a senior instructor at Purdue University, Fort Wayne, where he teaches mathematics to typically first-year students in face-to-face, hybrid, HyFlex, and online formats. He enjoys using technology to create hands-on activities to help students learn, including interactive videos with Camtasia and Adobe Captivate. He also creates algorithmic, internet-based self-scoring homework questions for college algebra and trigonometry Elementary using Mobius, MyMathLab, and Wiley Plus. Thank you so much, John, for being here and sharing with us. I'm going to hand this over to you now. Oh, and I'm also going to share the presentation that you sent me.
That'd be great.
Just one moment while I bring
Throw
that
that
up.
on there. So as you do that, and I can just kind of introduce many of the things you're doing as you're, that I took a lesson from architecture when I looked at what did I learn, from the pandemic. And that was a build a course, the way a skyscraper is constructed so they're able to handle an earthquake. And if you've ever seen, a skyscraper in an earthquake, hopefully it's not, one of those things you've done. Well, if Judith hit the control or hit the enter button, you'll see what happens next. They sway. They actually are flexible, designed to sway. We're involved, like in higher ed. We know that higher ed can seem instead rigid and monolithic and solidly entrenched in your past ideas and impervious to change. But rigid skyscrapers are destined to collapse. I mean, we just know when the winds of change blow and you're rigid, you're not going to survive very well. And the winds of change of this pandemic have been unprecedented. It wasn't just a mere hurricane or a tornado. No, it was more like a sharknado. I mean, I felt like we were riding on new demands of technology, unexpected bumps, changing safety protocols, grief, trauma, not just once, but actually day after day after day. I mean, didn't it feel like this? I like this shark kicker. I wanted to have, and I needed flexibility. So let's get all flexed. I'd like to share with you ways I'm incorporating flexibility in my course design to handle any unexpected shark attacks. Now, that's my goal this semester in design. So as the introduction mentioned, I do teach college algebra, and then I also teach trigonometry. And I've included structure in the class. It's not a free-for-all. And I have these deadlines that are flexible. So maybe they shouldn't be called dead. They need to cross the finish line, so they do need those motivational markers. But like Bree had mentioned, there is an opportunity if you pass that marker that you can still get it in. So the structure incorporates flexibility. One way to incorporate that flexibility, and I literally, I wiggle room in the schedule, which means essentially to distill that content to what's necessary. Now, I know it's really hard to admit there's content I can leave out. And I have to think about what last year, when I had to trim the fat because we moved to Pivot in March 2020, what could I eliminate out of my course? Now, I have compared what's nice and what's necessary. And do I need to put the stuff that's just nice back in? And if I do need to put it in, can I put it at the end of the course where I can still have an opportunity to drop it off if the sharks invade? So as mentioned, I use this online software called Mobius, which enables me to write my own algorithmic questions. And so I can create a really deep question bank. It's oceanic deep. And what is nice about it is it gives freedom of choice for them to turn it in, because each assignment will be different from their other classmates' assignment. Now, I know everyone can't have that advantage, but perhaps based on your discipline, teachers can incorporate more choice in providing different options for an assignment. And that way, if a student gets COVID or it happens to be Shark Week in their personal lives, they're just not eaten alive. Now, I also made quizzes and exams. Now, in my face-to-face class, it's all online. So they get a whole week to do those assessments. And I give practice assessments for them so that they know that it's not going to be a surprise what's on the test. And I've really shifted my thinking about my face-to-face course design. And it does not look like what it was before the pandemic. Now, before COVID, which is BC, some of us have been told by administrators, that's what you should do now. Go back to BC before COVID. I think this is an example of a toxic rationale, which I have had called, and it's a goofy name, Dit Willy. Have you heard of it? You know what Dit Willy is? It's did it that way last year. And if you conclude that did it that way last year, it's did it that way with COVID. So my online class, and there it is, did it that way last year. My online class and my face-to-face class used to just have different, entirely course designs. Now in BC days, that was a good approach, but now I've mixed them and I've blended them. So I've definitely made it prepared for any unexpected surprises, because the students can dip into that repository of that online material in my face-to-face class. And that way they can be very flexible. And the last slide is just my blog with a little bit of promotion here. If you want to see more ways I've put structure in. And great thanks to Melissa, Judith, Clea, and Karen for some of the ideas I put in that blog.
That's a lot to think about. I was taking notes while navigating the slides. Very good, thank you. So that concept of being flexible and building in flexibility and designing flexibility, excellent. Our next presenter is Dr. Jody Mader. Jody has transitioned from faculty member to a full-time faculty developer starting in May 2021. She manages programs for the Faculty Enrichment Center at the University of Cincinnati. Thank you so much for being here with us, Jody. I'm going to hand things over to you now.
Thank you, Judith. Hi, everybody. I don't know how I can follow Sharknado and Dit Willy. This is awesome. Mine's not that exciting, so I will do my best. So yeah, I have transitioned from full-time faculty member to faculty developer, going back to teaching presumably in the spring a little bit as an adjunct, but this fall I am working with some high school students. So I'll be using some of these techniques when I work with them to kind of coach them in college and trade programs. I think the thing that I'm hearing is this idea of a lot of your ideas kind of fit into what I'm going to talk about. Spring 2020 is that, BC, that's what I say, pre-COVID, post-COVID. And I think the thing that I have taken since then, especially in my courses, is embrace technology. I'm a historian. I'm a bit of a Luddite. I know pre-BC, students would have their phones on the desk, the laptop on the desk. I would say, put it away. I didn't want any of that. And I think what I've learned is, you got to use the tech tools. If the phone's out, okay, well, let's use the phone to teach. And so I started researching some of those tech tools like Kahoot, other ways to engage them with that phone that sits on their desk. Even the laptops. And some of the other things that I did use for the tech is, I've heard about the Zoom office hours. I did an online study session, and I've never done that before. And students, I felt sometimes I had a stronger, more deeper questions on a online study session than I ever had. More students were willing to come online and use the chat function. And then sometimes they were interacting with each other. So I think, embracing a Kahoot activity in class pre-COVID, I never would have done. But I had started to use that at the beginning of class to reinforce things. And I just saw an energy that I had never seen before. And so, I decided to jump on the tech tool wagon and allow the phones and allow the laptops, because I think they're here to stay. And I think, there are always things you can't control, but, I have a 14-year-old who has learned all of his life by the laptop, and I don't think he'll ever go any other way. I think the other thing that I have carried with me since then is I got this from Kate Denial, who also I believe is an OLT member. I met her a while ago. One thing that I think also with COVID, and we're all kind of accepting different modalities and way students submit things. I know if you guys have heard of this thing called the unessay. And as a historian, we get a lot of research papers. And this was before COVID, I had this moment of, let's do, instead of a final exam where they just pile all the information, let the student figure some topic within the course and then make a project. And so I did it before COVID, as a history, for example, I had a course on ancient civilizations, and a student says, oh, I like learn about the Roman army, so I'm going to make a video game out of it. Oh, I want to recreate an Egyptian mummification. So, and then COVID hit. And I thought, well, I can't do this again. I mean, this is a very in-person experience. So I had an online course, American Women's History, where I said, okay, I'm going to try this on essay. We'll never meet. We'll never have that moment of sharing together, but how can you get a digital submission, a digital project? And so I created a rubric. I mean, Kate Denial has a great blog on this. She does a great job on it. If you're interested, I'm happy to, if anybody wants to ask how I did it. I have a few assignments I can share. And I was amazed at what people submitted. I had one student do a podcast of the 1960s women's liberation movement. And so they did this and they just uploaded it beautifully for me. I had another student who made a pillow, and she had, it was a very personal situation. She had, given up a child. And so she wanted to create this pillow to represent the colors. And so then that's a question, well, how do you submit that? So she made a video for me. She took pictures and she narrated. And it was, even just a digital clip was so moving. And so I really have changed my mindset about online learning and online reflection. And so I think using this project, both in person and online, I think is very doable. And I think my last piece here that, and I think I reflect with everybody else, is the connectivity to students. You've got that mask, and, you have that half of that face. And I think being available to students, offering Zoom hours. And one thing I did do before I'll sign off here, sometimes we walk into class and go, how's everything going? And, everybody just kind of stares there, especially for an in-person. I would give them all an index card, and I'd say, okay, I'd ask them certain questions. How are you doing? How's your classes going? How's your fall or how your spring semester? And sometimes I found students will write more on an index card than they would ever raise their hand and tell you. And so I tried to find different ways to get student feedback. And it's not always easy. Students, I know there's that disconnect. We're professor, they're student. But I think just showing this compassion and try to get through this time, that is very difficult. So those are just my three that I have tried to do, and I will continue, and I look forward to in the spring to doing that. But yeah, I think I'm still a bit of a Luddite, but I have embraced the technology.
Thank you, Jody, so much for sharing that with us. I see strong connections to the idea of humanizing and flexibility. I see this theme kind of coming together with all of our shares here today. And there are so many good things that would work in any modality of teaching. So our final presentation today is from Clea Mahoney. Clea is an instructional technologist at New York University, where she leads faculty training initiatives on teaching and learning with technology, and teaches an asynchronous graduate course on content marketing and writing for digital and social media for the NYU School of Professional Studies. Thank you so much, Clea, for being here with us, and I'm going to hand it over to you now.
Oh, thank you so much, Judith, for that fantastic introduction. You did it better than I could have done it. So yes, I'm an instructional technologist, and until summer 2020, believe it or not, I had never taught a traditional course, whether that was online, face-to-face, anything. I actually spent most of my career trying to avoid teaching because I am an introvert, whether that comes across right now or not. I've always been more comfortable online, and I kind of freeze up in a classroom. So I was always more about helping faculty help their students, help inform their teaching. But a lot of faculty don't like to listen to the tech lady. So selfish reasons, I signed up for that summer 2020 course because I just wanted my audience to have some buy-in with me. Now it does have a less cynical, happy ending. I ended up really finding that, and I think a lot of people will tell me, yeah, obviously, Clea, I love teaching. I love teaching online. I want to keep doing it forever. I taught that first course in summer 2020. It didn't go perfectly, but I'll tell you what worked. And in terms of what I just finished wrapping up at the beginning of August, second round teaching the same course, some things were better, some things were worse, but I'm taking a lot of lessons learned from the other panelists today and focusing on flexibility. So, and I want to recap a little bit and talk less about myself, but Bree talked about humanizing teaching, and that was really important to me too. I needed my students to know who I was, and I wanted to get to know them. Michelle talked about student choice and how you are more accessible when you're virtual and students can join you wherever in the world they might be joining from. I had a student this past summer who logged in from China, another one from Hawaii, and I never would have met those folks otherwise. John talked about flexibility and watching out for that Sharknado. And yeah, that Sharknado, it plowed through my course 2 summers, but we survived because we had that flexible element in place. So it was kind of like, whoop, we can bounce back. Jody talked about choice and how students can demonstrate their learning. So that's also something that's been really important to me. The folks I teach are graduate students. And of course, my faculty learners, they have very different experiences. I learned a lot just from being a facilitator with the Online Learning Toolkit, doing Camp Operation Online Learning and a few offerings throughout the whole year. So overall, really my theme that I wanted to focus on is connection. And I always think about a course that I audited in strategic communications. We read a book called Compelling People, and I love that book. I still recommend it really to anyone because no matter what we do, whether we teach, whether we support faculty, whether we're students ourselves, we're always communicating. And there was this diagram that I still remember. It's basically like a stick figure drawing with a circle around it. And there's you as the teacher or the presenter in the middle, and your audience is outside of that circle. So if you never connect with your audience, why should they listen to you? Some of the resources that I took advantage of in customizing, adapting for my teaching, another Michelle Pacansky-Brock shout out. She has a really excellent getting to know you form. It was very easy for me to create a Google form where I asked my students their preferred names, pronouns, what's challenging them this summer, because it was a pandemic and I was very out there, open and honest about that, right? It's going to be a different experience. Let's try to make it the best we can. That form, because I do work in technology, I was able to export it to a spreadsheet, and that became my student spreadsheet. And I still have that. It's a really nerdy thing that I'm very proud of, but I'll actually jot down notes, are they participating every week? But beyond that, what are they interested in? I might write, oh, so-and-so is interested in writing for business. So think about any resources I might send them, or think about how some of these students could pair up based on that common interest. And that has really been beneficial, focusing less on the content. Of course, that still matters. Of course, the learning objectives still matter, but we're teaching people, and it's really important to get to know those people. I'll also say that because I'm supporting my institution right now through a transition to a new learning management system after the LMS learning management system was pretty much optional BC, right? Now they suddenly had to use it, and now there's a brand new one. So a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress. And I think advice for anyone who's teaching, whether you're using new technology or the same, keep it simple, save some time for flexibility. My own syllabus, when I share it with my students, it's still never finished. I'm always tweaking. I'm always thinking, oh, they got stuck on that this week. How can I add some remedial information? So nothing is ever finished. And I've just come to learn to embrace that because it's much more interesting, right? If we didn't get to know our students, those courses would be very boring. And they're different every time. And that's something that I've really come to appreciate.
Thank you so much, Clea, for sharing those tips. I think that idea of connection, getting to know you, that's huge. And something that I know that I've heard from so many faculty, they were challenged by in teaching in an online learning environment for the first time, especially. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you also to all of our panelists for your presentations. We're actually going to transition right into the Q&A section immediately here. And I have a question for John that is in the Q&A already. This is from Umar, and Umar is asking how to best engage students in online teaching, especially in quantitative courses like accounting, economics, and finance. It's always a challenge, and I have a feeling that students might not be much engaged. Do you have an engagement tip you'd like to share?
If you can, it's a great question because it is a challenge. I feel for you. And I think what I try to do is mathematize their world. So is there a way their personal environment somehow can connect to the content? Now, with my course, it's kind of strange because it's algebra, but I'll say, for example, here's a strange idea, and maybe you can adapt it. Like I'll say, go take a picture in your house of something where you see two lines of opposite slope, but they're not perpendicular. And you have to use your photo. So they're actually contributing to the rest of the class, and all the classes are helping. That's just one thing that comes to my mind. The other thing is I love to use data that they are aware of. All this COVID data for like the unemployment rate, or median household income, or things like that that's live that they can go to. Or if you went to this site on Google that will actually tell you how often does the frequency of the word pandemic appear in a textbook, and it'll graph it, or all this sort of fun stuff. Or ask them, where did you see this content in your real life? Contribute that, because why not outsource your wonderful students to help you with that same question? That's just right now what I thought of. The volcano just erupted and that came out, but I might come up with more. Email me and we'll do more chatting.
Thank you so much for that response. The next question I'm going to tap Clea for. This is from a professor who's teaching a course in plant biology. One big issue that I faced in teaching online is the connectivity issue. I am sending recorded lectures to them. Hope it will get better in next semester. And I am curious if the connectivity issue means like live connection, as in technical, like web connect, or connecting with students and feeling connected to them, or maybe it's both.
Yeah, I feel like it could be everything, so I'll try to cover all of that. Connectivity. I think do your best. I always like to recommend that instructors send out some best practices in terms of, can you connect, your computer to an Ethernet connection rather than relying on a Wi-Fi signal? That may be better. Can you ask them to invest in a headset? This one I think is about $25, $30, not the fanciest, but definitely does the job. Think about what they can do to improve that connectivity, but be prepared for things to go wrong. So recently, I think last month, it was very hot in my office where I am in Colorado, and I was supposed to deliver a workshop to 50 or so faculty. Well, my computer decided it had had enough with the heat, and I got the spinny wheel of death, as Mac users may recognize. What did I do? I ran to the basement where it's cooler. I turned off my webcam. I sat cross-legged on the floor, and I said, all right, let's try to continue. And we did. Now, in cases where you can't recover, I think absolutely sending out those recorded lectures is great. I like to recommend that folks make those shorter as much as possible, or include timestamps, like in the first 10 minutes, we'll be talking about this. 20 minutes in, we're focusing on this, because imagine watching a 2-hour lecture. Even you would probably be tempted to tune out, right? So it's all about where can we grab their attention? Where can we bring them back in? I even decided to make some of my own short mini lecture videos interactive without doing some of the fancy stuff that I know John Lemaster does, like inserting questions and quizzes. I just said, all right, at this point in the video, I want you to pause. No, really, please do it. And write down anything that comes to mind when it comes to X. So thinking about some low tech or even no tech to ask them to pause, to reflect, to draw on their prior experiences, anything that might already be swirling around in their brains like a Sharknado. We want them to share that, right? It's not just us presenting to them. So I hope that helps answer a little bit, but I'll take a look at the Q&A box to see if there's any other tips I can share there.
Thank you. Sarah has a question for Bree. I love the new way forward and Bree's suggestion for suggested deadlines. On the other side, how do you balance grading and trying to be flexible for students as they need?
Yes, that is a great question. I am fortunate. I have graduate assistants who do help me with grading. I'm a tenure track professor. So I'll be honest, I do have support in that way where other instructors may not. So it does give me that ability to have my graduate assistants grade when I help them grade too, but they are there to help support me as well. I will say, like, I've seen things on Twitter, like concerns about students, like all the students in your class waiting until the last week. That has not been my experience at all. 90% of them submit by the best by date. And then there's those who, are going through some legit stuff right now. And, during this pandemic and beyond, where they can't submit on time. And those are few. And, I would rather be inclusive to the few than privilege it to those who can submit on time each week. And so I have not really had an issue. I think since summer 2020, I've had 2 students submit like everything the last week, and that was it. And, I graded it, we made it through. I would rather be inclusive to that student. That's just my 2 cents.
Thank you. One more question for you, Bree, about back channel chat during live in-person class sessions. Have you thought about maintaining a back channel chat during live in-person class sessions? If so, how would you use a chat and what program? And maybe another panelist is doing this already who might want to share, but I know you mentioned Discord.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would keep Discord. I have it on my phone. I'm a gamer, so like I already use Discord all the time. I would suggest using that. It's worked really well. I think you could still use it in person. I am not teaching in person again until next semester, so I will revisit that and think about it. But my plan is to keep Discord, and also something that I took away from OLT is that when we choose technology, we shouldn't be just choosing what's flashy or sexy in the moment. We should be really mindful about the technology that we choose, because we don't want to overwhelm students with learning too many new things and things that are off of the LMS. So I try to be very purposeful about what I choose. And I chose Discord because I could facilitate that back channel talk, that informal talk. They can talk amongst each other without me, which is totally fine with me. But also I can facilitate discussion board like posts on Discord. I can also do voice and screen share through Discord. So I chose that platform very specifically because it fulfilled a lot of different areas that I wanted for the class.
Got a great follow-up question to that about the use of Discord and collection of data. And I don't know the answer to that question offhand, how deeply they collect data on our students. So I promised that I would look into that and include it in the follow-up email, as that is something that we all should be thinking about. Thank you.
Yes, and I would recommend getting permission from your university and your instructional designer. We have one specifically for our department and our college. So I went through and asked for permission instead of waiting and asking for forgiveness. I started my new position and I went through this with them. So I would recommend doing that to be safe, because each institution may have restrictions on privacy and using tools off of the LMS.
Thank you. So we are coming up on the end of our time here. I just thought I would close with one last question for 2 finalists or 2 panelists. I just want to make sure I'm not on mute. Okay. Michelle, I just was curious if you have a self-care tip that you have that you can pass along. This is a question we get a lot from community members. How can we be taking care of ourselves during this time?
That's a really good question. And I don't know that any of us do it really well. Maybe some do, but it's just, we try so hard to take care of everybody around us and take care of our students. And we don't often take time to take care of ourselves. One thing a decision that I have made, and then I tell my students this, is I have taken push notifications off of my phone. And so I could still check my email on my phone, but it's not going to ding off every time that they're messaging me. And I tell them these are the hours in which you can expect a response from me and how long it will take me to respond generally. And that has been really helpful in being able to, especially when I'm working and living at home, to be able to set some kind of boundary for this is the point when I am done tonight, and that I'm not going to be checking email in bed at 10 p.m. and responding. So I think that setting those boundaries is really important.
That is a great tip, and one that also Melissa Whaler just recently gave to me, was to take the notifications off of my phone because I get addicted to them, and it can really be a lot of cognitive load to carry around. And then a final question here for Jody, in light of your also faculty support role here, how can we continue to connect with our peers while we are social distancing, and connect with colleagues about teaching practice?
I think I think we all need to check in with each other. I think it's important to, there is this social distancing, there is the distance, and we have this Delta, but I think the Delta variant, but I think always keeping up the lines of communications. I'm a bit of a Luddite, call people, call friends. I know we're all texting, but, I think sometimes the human voice, sometimes, text, if you don't want to call someone, text and say, what time is a good time to call you? So I think just keeping lines of communication, sharing resources like this, I think maybe a monthly check-in with your friends, your colleagues always works best.
Thank you. Great idea. So thank you so much. On behalf of the Online Learning Toolkit team, I want to thank our speakers once again for sharing their time and expertise. I also thank you to our audience for attending and engaging today. If you liked what you heard, saw, engaged with, please join our community. It's a global network of caring, passionate, creative, and curious educators who provide support and share resources. Everybody you heard here from today is connected with our community, and they are as wonderful always as they were today. More information on how to register is available at onlinelearningtoolkit.com/community. And we also invite you to just connect with us. You can connect with us via email and social media. So once again, on behalf of the Online Learning Toolkit, thank you. We will follow up soon with resources and the link to the recording, and have a great afternoon, or whatever time it is where you are. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. That was wonderful.
We are still live on YouTube.
I don't know
Hey, YouTube, what's up?